Sam, I'm 24 years old, I'm from Birmingham and I identify as a gay man. I first realised I was gay when I was 8 years old. That was typically a lot younger than a lot of other people. I remember being in year 4 and there was a boy in the class that I felt some type of way for, and immediately I knew that that was something that I shouldn't openly talk about, because when you grow up in school, especially during that time, everything was so heteronormative, meaning that everything that we were taught about in terms of families was always a mother and a father and children. Nobody ever said that there were alternative types of families or there were alternative types of relationships to the standard heterosexual couple. So I never ever spoke about knowing how I actually felt about, this particular person. And I never used to speak about it. But back then, when you're younger, especially at that age, it's not your priority to think about stuff like that. You just know it, but you don't. I didn't feel like I needed to mention it either. But then as you get older, the consequences of being gay then become more apparent. So then when I joined secondary school, I had the fortune of joining an all-boys school. And as a closeted gay kid, you can imagine how difficult that would have been. At that time, people used to say negative things about being gay all the time. The word gay itself was just associated with so many negative connotations. There was literally no kid that I knew who wouldn't say, oh, that's gay, this is gay, like to describe something that they didn't like. And so when you're an impressionable young child and you're hearing that from your peers around you, the people that you see on a daily basis, you're going to let that affect you really badly. So immediately then, even though before that, when I was younger, I knew not to speak about it, but then as I got older, I then realised, oh, actually, it's probably a good thing that I don't speak about it anymore, or at all, because it's obviously something negative. It's not something that you're supposed to be. It's something that people look down upon. It's something that people don't accept. It's something that people don't like. And then that filled me with a lot of, anxiety and self-hatred of the fact that I was gay, basically. And I didn't really know what to do with it. You knew that, like, if I ever mentioned anything about my sexuality to anybody, I'm going to open myself up to bullying from all these kids, and I don't want to be bullied because nobody wants to be bullied. So then when you're living with that fear, it really, really begins to degrade your self-esteem, because ultimately you're denying a part of yourself and you're not allowing yourself to be who you are, essentially. And therefore, my self-esteem started to degrade because I was literally not being my total self every day. I was waking up every day, going to school, pretending to be somebody and lying about myself all the time. When boys started talking about girls eventually, be like, oh, this girl's fit, that girl's fit. You have to pretend and join in that conversation. You have to be like, yeah, she is. But then you're lying to yourself and you're lying to them and you feel like a bad person. And then, you're a young teenager. You haven't got this sort of emotional intelligence to deal with all these things of pretending to be somebody you're not, right? When you're like, 12 to 16. And then it just really degraded my self-esteem and it led to really poor mental health at the time. And I really wasn't able to cope for a while because it got quite dark, to be honest. I wasn't happy with life. I just didn't want to be there, essentially. And that's how it felt. I was raised in a Muslim family, and as we know, religion and being gay just aren't something that can go together so harmoniously. It's always a difficult thing for people to see them together as one. There was never any positivity spoken about it. And when you're a child, when you're at that age, your two biggest communities are your school community and your family community. And your religious community, or whatever community you belong to, sports, whatever, those are your biggest ones. So at that time, both parts of my world and both parts of my life were telling me, you are wrong and you're associated with something bad. But I ultimately knew that it's not something that I wanted to be. It just is I am what I am. I never woke up one day and said, I want to be gay. I'm going to open myself up to fear, doubt, anxiety, bullying, and, live in shame. Nobody says that. It's like, why is this happening to me? And that just made my mental health deteriorate even worse, because not only was I then pretending to be somebody else at school, I had to then pretend to be somebody else at home. So like I had obviously gayer interests, like compared to other guys. So I had to then hide things that I liked, like, particular songs that I liked, particular TV shows that I watched, because they were considered gay for a boy to watch. And so then it really became just a life of hiding things. Looking back, it's quite funny, really, because it's just like, oh, you're hiding a TV show you watch, you're hiding, some songs that you listen to, you're hiding an artist that you liked. But because you're you live in such fear of people finding out about who you are, you begin to really overthink every part of your life. Like, I would have conversations with people of like, did I give away that I was gay? And even if in some sentences and in some conversations, like maybe I flipped my wrist in a gay way, do you know what I mean? Or I said a gay slang word, right? And people are just like, what are you saying that for? Do you know what I mean? Like, that would eat me up. Like, they would forget about it after the conversation finished. But for me, that would stay in my brain for like a longer time than normal. And for about 2 or 3 days, I'd be like, do you reckon that person knows? Does that person know? Does that person know? And that living in fear was just a terrible, terrible time for me to go through. If people in school treated it a lot different than how they did, and they were spoken more openly about it, and they were like, yeah, being gay is normal, that's completely fine, and people were more accepting of it, I would never have gone through that cycle of self-doubt and anxiety and poor mental health issues. And therefore, I would have been a confident person a lot earlier in life, because I suffered with poor mental health issues for a long time. It manifested when I was about 13, 14, when the harsh realities of what being gay meant became apparent to me. And then as you're getting older, you're realising that, oh, I'm going to hit my 20s soon, I'm going to start to actually have a relationship with somebody so people can get off the scent and stuff like that. These realities became more real as you got older. So then I spent all of those years pretty much being low in confidence, not being able to look people in the eye when I was talking, always hiding myself, being shy, not getting involved in sports, not getting involved in extracurricular activities, really, really limiting my social circle, because things just started piling on me, and it became more intense with dealing with my sexuality, basically, and trying to hide this secret. And I know that if it was a more positive environment when I was younger, and people just said, who cares if you're gay? Yes, you're gay, whatever, moving on, and people more open and accepting and positive about it, I would never have had to go through that. I would have had my confidence come a lot earlier, like any other normal straight teenager would have. Yes, everybody has different life problems that will affect them, but I wouldn't have had the extra pressure of needing to hide my sexuality away from people. It would have been a lot more better for my mental health, really. When you're gay, and either if you're in the closet or when you've come out, a lot of people will see you as less than a man. I've been in certain situations where I'm standing right there and people have said, we need a real man around here, right? We need somebody to help us, somebody strong. And it's almost as if they're insinuating that because I am gay, I don't exude these typical masculine traits that straight men might have. I know ultimately I am a man, and I can be quite masculine. Because of those things that people have said, I feel like I constantly have to prove my masculinity. I always need to prove that yes, I am a man, and sometimes I overcompensate for that, which is understandable, because you don't want to be seen as less of a man just because of your sexuality. Gay men are just as manly as a straight man. Like, I've met gay men who are in the gym lifting like weights, like proper like big lads who don't like all the typical feminine things, and you would never look at them and think they're gay, but they are. When you grow up Muslim and gay, you constantly hear from the priests in the mosque and Muslims around you that, oh, homosexuality is wrong, it can never be accepted by Islam. If you are gay, then you're probably going to be sent to hell. That's literally what people used to say. If you're gay, you're going to get sent to hell. It was never a positive thing. There was never any debate about it. There was no discussion. It was pretty much black and white. If you're gay, you are not a Muslim and you're going to be sent to hell. But there's me, who's been raised in a Muslim family. I've been fasting like everybody else. I've been praying like everybody else. I've been going to mosque, standing in the lines of prayer, listening to the same sermon that everybody else does. Probably leading a much better life compared to some of the stories I heard about, people around me, about what they were doing. But yet they were so adamant that no, if you are gay, you're just not a Muslim. You're not accepted by our community at all. So it really confused me, as in, if I've stood in lines of prayer at the mosque, no lightning bolt has struck me down while I'm standing there. Do you know what I mean? I still felt positively impacted by religion just as much as anybody else did, at the time. And I felt like when I did pray, things were being listened to about other things in life. So I didn't understand how people could stand there and then tell me that being gay Muslim you couldn't be it, it wasn't synonymous. Because I knew that I was positively impacted by religion, much like anybody else would have been. And I was doing all the same things that every other religious person around me was doing. Nothing was stopping me from doing it. So I was like, well, you can be, because I am gay and I am Muslim, but obviously I didn't speak openly about the fact that I was gay, or that I am gay rather. You do, feel like, okay, I'm going to be ostracized if they do know. So then I thought, okay, which one do I really want to be here? The one that's going to keep me safe in the community and have people like me and allow me to have friends and be involved with people, or am I going to allow myself to be the person that's possibly going to then open myself up to bullying and be ostracized? Which one do I want to be here? And I chose the religious side. So then I spent a lot of time being super religious, and I didn't grow a beard or anything, like walk out with a hat and everything. But I used to pray quite often. I used to make sure to go to the mosque quite often. Like every year I used to do all the fasting and tried to really ensure that I was living a good Muslim life. And I always used to pray every prayer, to make me straight, basically. I was like, I don't understand why I'm gay. Why am I going through this? If you are gay, the only sort of advice that Muslims offer to people who were struggling with their sexuality, which I'd found online, was if you are gay, then that's the choice. It's not a sin to have homosexual thoughts, but it's a sin to act on it. So you must remain celibate your entire life. So then, am I then expected to remain celibate and get married and be a dutiful, Indian and Muslim person son to my parents, and get married to a woman and live a lie? Or, because isn't that just as bad? Isn't that just as terrible, to hide a secret from somebody and ruin a poor woman's life and basically lie to her your entire life? That advice can't be right. That's still just as bad, really. I tried to pray it away, but then as I got older, I realised it's not changing. It's not changing. I don't know what to do about it. You realise that actually, I'm gay, that's not going to change. Which one am I really choosing here? Am I really choosing to be gay, or am I choosing to be Muslim? Which one am I really choosing? And I was like, actually, I'm choosing to be religious over my actual sexuality that I can't change. And then I realised that, do you know what, the two can be actually synonymous. The two can be together. Nothing stops me from praying, nothing stops me from, doing the things that good Muslims are supposed to do, right? So how can then anybody else point a finger at me and say I can't be who I want to be? The last time I went to the mosque was, I think it was about 2 years ago. And every Eid you have to go and do a prayer in the mosque in the morning. Much like how at Christmas you have midnight mass. For Eid you go to the mosque in the morning at like 9 a.m. and do an Eid prayer. And I was sitting there, and the priest, the imam, he was preaching a sermon to everybody. And he was a young British lad who had become a priest like quite early on in his life. He was British Asian as well, so I was like, he must have a good understanding of the Western world. He has a young opinion on things. He's probably going to speak some sense. And he was talking about how Muslims make up a large proportion of the jail community and all that sort of stuff, and like really saying how we need to make a difference within the Muslim community and open our eyes and educate ourselves. And I was like, this guy is like really preaching some sense. I was like, you're doing so well. And then he rounded it off with, but be careful, because they still say it's okay to be gay and Muslim nowadays, but we need to be wary of certain things like that. And then I just realised, I was like, do you know what? You can try and make as much a difference as you want, but for some people it is going to be black and white. But the best thing that you can do is just educate them. If there's no gay Muslims that they haven't met, you need to be that gay Muslim and show them that, oh, actually, it can be together. So that's why I took on that role and responsibility to do that and educate people about it, because there will be very many closeted gay children in South Asian and Muslim families across the world. I recognise that I live in a country where I'm quite privileged actually, because I live in the UK, right, where being gay is so open and it's so accepting now. So it would be sort of an insult to, like, you know, people living in fear in other countries like Pakistan. If I then denied my identity and didn't proactively make steps to, you know, sort of make it better for people here, I feel like that would be almost an insult to everybody who lives in fear in other Muslim countries. Do you know what I mean? Because they don't have the privilege that I have. I need to recognise that I have this privilege and be out and open about it, basically. That's how I feel. So growing up gay was even more difficult because I'm literally a minority within a minority within a minority. Uh, I'm an ethnic minority, obviously being brown, right? I'm Indian, and then within that, I was raised in a Muslim family, and there's not very many Indian Muslims out there because everybody assumes Indians are either Hindu or Sikh, and then within that as well, I'm also gay. So I was literally a minority within a minority within a minority. So all three aspects of my life were three aspects that was open up to being ridiculed, essentially. When you're, you know, a different ethnicity, you open up to casual racism from people around you, primarily in school. People make fun of me being Indian and say things like, oh, you know, you smell like curry, whatever, all that kind of stuff. And then when you're Muslim, I went to school in like from 2005 to 2012, and the London bombings had just happened in 2005. And that was a really big sort of moment for Muslim kids in school, because I feel like across the country, they were just immediately just being the target of a lot of abuse. People would always just shout bomb at me, shout, you know, try and imitate Allahu Akbar, which is what people say, Muslims say. Quite often when they engage in terrorist attack, people would always hear that, and they would try and imitate that to me all the time. That's why I decided to remain even more closeted, because I knew that if I even shared that I was gay at the time, you know, I'm already a target for two aspects of my life for being made fun of. I'm now going to add a third one into the works here. Like, that's not going to be good, is it? That's really not going to help my self-esteem. So again, that contributed to me wanting to hide that and not sharing that with anybody. So I decided to come out to my family before I was 20, because I had this momentary realization of, I don't want to then go into the second or the third decade of my life, my 20s, when I should really be enjoying myself and building myself up. I had this realization that I can't go into another decade of my life hiding this secret and allowing things to continue the way that they are. I want it to be different. When I went to university, that was a really monumental time in my life where I met people who were actually open about LGBT issues. And I had a friend who I think could tell that I was gay, but she never really once probed me or asked me or ever said anything derogative about it. Now I realise, looking back, that she would always purposely say positive things about it all the time around me to make me realise that she was a comfortable person that I could open up to. And also, I had this job in a restaurant where there was actually 5 openly gay people working there. So all of a sudden, I've gone from this environment where it was this negativity surrounding what being gay was, this whole ideology that if you were gay, you'd be ridiculed, to then being in an environment where there's 5 happy people who are openly gay and living their best life, and I'm still in the closet. And I'm like, wait, hang on a second. I've never had this exposure before. This is great. Like, these people are living their, you know, great lives and going out confident, comfortable in themselves. I want to be like them. That's what I want for myself. I don't want to live in fear anymore. I don't want to live in a constant state of anxiety and self-doubt and poor self-esteem. And looking back now, I really appreciate those people. I was fortunate to meet them. You know, it was almost fate, really, that I met them, because they then gave me the best advice. And again, didn't ask me, didn't probe me, but were able to make an environment around me knowing that, like, this is going to help him accept himself, and it really did. I then began to decide that I want to come back to my family and I want to live my life as my actual identity, which is a gay man. I'm not going to hide it anymore. I'm not going to lie about it. I decided to come back to my dad first because I'm quite lucky that my dad is born and raised in the UK. So he's British Indian like me. But so he's not from India, he was born and raised here. So I knew that, like, out of my both parents, he was probably the best person to talk to first. Now that surprised a lot of people, because a lot of people would say, you told your dad first over your mum. Because most people feel like, you know, that's something you don't share with your dad, because he's the whole masculine, you know, figure in the household that would probably be more ashamed of you being gay. And that is true. There was aspects of me where I denied having more of a relationship with him than I ought to, because I felt like I wasn't being a man in his eyes, because I knew that my dad was happy of having 2 boys and he wanted them to be like, really, good lads, strong lads. But I felt like because I was gay and I was soaking up all the negativity about it, I was allowing myself to think that I wasn't man enough to be his son. So then that made me shy away from him. But then as I got older and more confident with my sexuality, I realised, no, actually, he's probably probably the best person to talk to about it, who would understand it the best out of my parents. So then I decided, it was quite funny how I came out to him actually. I literally was upstairs, I was studying for my second year university exams, and I came downstairs, he was watching the TV. I literally watched like so many interviews of celebrities who were talking about their coming out experiences, like Ricky Martin or Ellen DeGeneres. And I was like getting advice, and I was like, how am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? And then I go downstairs, and my dad's just watching Match of the Day or whatever. And I sit on the sofa, like opposite him, across the room. And then I was like, Dad, I need to talk to you. And he was like, what? Like, I'm here knowing that I'm about to change this man's life with the news that I'm going to give him. But he's just there casually watching the TV. So I sat down and I said, Dad, I need to talk to you. It's about me, and it's something really important that I need to say. And he just didn't even look away from the TV. He was like, what is it, Sam? Like, not even thinking anything of it. And I then just paused for ages, and I couldn't say what I wanted to say. It probably was only about 10 seconds, but it felt like an eternity, that pause did. And he then looked at me and was like, are you telling me you got somebody pregnant? And I was just like, it's quite the opposite of that, Dad. He was like, what's the opposite of getting somebody pregnant? And I was like, well, and then I paused for a long time. And then I finally said gay. And he didn't react. He did not react at all. He literally just sat there quietly, continued watching Match of the Day. No expression in his face whatsoever, just complete poker face. And I was just like, right, do I pack my bags? Am I getting kicked out? Do I need to like dodge some stones he's going to throw at me? Like, am I going to be stoned to death? What's going to go on? And then he then just looked at me for a brief second and was just like, and what? What do you want me to do about it? And I was just like, wait, what? I did not expect that at all. So everything, that I said about being Muslim and the, people being ostracized and how, you just weren't accepted. In my mind as a teenager, I built that up in my head that my family believed the same things as well, because they never spoke positively about gay people. They never spoke about it at all. But then looking back now, South Asians, they just don't talk about relationships in general. That's just what the culture's like. You meet the one when you're 24 and you get married and that's it. It just wasn't the reaction that I expected from my dad. I knew that he would be like cooler about it compared to my mum, but I didn't know he was going to be that chill about it. So I was like, okay, this is weird. I was like, where's the discussion? Where's the debate? Where's the questions? And where's the aggression? Where's the anger? But he didn't show any. But then I said, do you want to like give me a hug or anything and tell me it's going to be okay? I was trying to tell him what to do. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. Because that's what you've heard from all the coming out stories on YouTube and stuff. And he was like, no, I'm all right. And then that was it. It was just silence. And I was like, right, okay. And then my mum came home, right? Like really bad timing. And he then went for dinner with her. But then when he came back, I think he had time to process it. And then he said, actually, do you know what? I did think that you probably could have been from when you were a child, because, you did ask me to buy you tickets to a Lady Gaga concert. And then you didn't talk about girls for a long time, and you're like 19, 20 now. So, there's no girlfriend in the horizon. So I began to think that maybe, you are. What I learned from that experience is that when you come out to your parents are now dealing with a secret that you've held for 10 years, and now they've got to process it. Unless you've got really amazing parents, you can't expect your mum and dad to just look and you be like, oh yeah, that's fine, right? Let's bring your boyfriend to dinner next week. And they have got to come to terms with it themselves. You can't just let them, be on their own devices as well. They're going to need the advice that you once had to look out for. They're going to need the reassurance that you once needed for your sexuality. The best coming out advice I think I could give to anybody is, when you want to come out, be prepared to have the emotional burden of educating your family and educating the people that you're going to come out to, because they might not have all the information that you now know, because you actively researched it to make yourself feel better. They never had the need to research it if they don't know anybody that is gay. If you're the first person coming out to them, it's likely that they wouldn't know all the stuff that you know. So you've got to talk to them, you've got to tell them about it. And then when I told him, I was like, this is why it affected our relationship. You know, I felt like I wasn't a man for you. I felt like I was a disappointment. I felt like I wasn't being a good son. I felt like I was always going to disappoint you. Like I knew from when I was about 11, 10 years old that I was going to grow up to disappoint you, and I had to live with that guilt forever. You know, that really, really impacted me, and it made me shy away from you, not want to have a relationship with you at all. And everything then began to make sense for him. And it was like, oh, is that why? I think he realised, like, of course it can't be a choice. And then I said to him as well, I was like, when did you choose to be straight, Dad? And he looked at me and was like, oh, I didn't choose to be straight. And I was like, well then, why would you think I would choose to be gay? And he was like, oh yeah. Sometimes it takes something as simple as that to say to somebody to make them realise. You know, and you just like use the word straight instead of the word gay in those sentences. It makes people think like, well, that doesn't make sense. It's like, well, why does it make sense for you to say it to me then? Do you know what I mean? So now the relationship with my dad is quite funny actually, because growing up, obviously, I shied away from him, didn't really get to understand him. But now, you know, my dad is so much more open with me. We actually go out for drinks sometimes. We didn't do that before. And he even told me about certain things, like, oh, some of the best nights out that I had when I was younger was actually at gay bars. And I was like, Dad, what are you doing at gay bars? And he was like, do you know what? It was actually quite fun. Like me and the lads used to go just for a laugh, and it actually turned out to be really quite fun. And I was like, oh, okay. Like my dad would never have told me that if I'd never spoken about being gay. You know, it sort of opened up just this area of conversation that we would never have otherwise had, that he would never have needed to speak to me about. So we're now much more open with one another, because, you know, he obviously realised that, oh, if Sam can share a big secret about his life to me, then, you know, I want to make it now so that he can talk to me about anything. So then I feel like that's why he's now putting all of his cards on the table and be like, look, this is me. So don't ever feel like you need to then hide anything from me, because it's better for us to be open and communicate with one another rather than you living and suffering in silence. I mean, it happened, you know, it happened, but he's doing the best that he can now to sort of be supportive, and I really appreciate that. My mum was also born and raised in India in 1970s in India. That's the decade she grew up in a small town in the middle of nowhere in India, right? That's where she grew up. Islam was pretty much the rules that people live by. Everything was basically black and white. It's this and it's that. This is what you do. You have an arranged marriage. You know, you only do this, you only do that. That's pretty much how it was. And so then my dad was like, right, you know, she's definitely gonna have a hard time processing this. So the best advice I can give you is to not tell anybody else. Keep it to yourself. And when you turn 27, 28 and you're settled in your career, and people are then going to start asking, why aren't you married? Why aren't you married? Then that's when we should just announce it at a dinner table that, oh yeah, Sam's actually gay, and just leave it there. And we'll tell your mum then, because right now she probably can't deal with it. She doesn't understand it. And like during that time, you could probably try and educate her about it a little bit more and drop hints about things so that it can slowly open her mind up, like that's how we'll do it. But then my brother then got engaged to a woman that my mum had essentially found for him. I was thinking in the back of my mind, like, you know, dutiful Indian sons are supposed to bring home a daughter-in-law to then, you know, keep the household going with the mother-in-law, right? My mum's always said to us growing up, I can't wait to have two daughter-in-laws. I've never been given a daughter, and I can't wait to have two daughter-in-laws. I want women in the house. Like I've lived in a house with 3 men. I can't wait to have more women in the house. She then found issues with this person and was just like, I don't really know if she's the right person. I don't really know. And she was saying what she was saying. And then I said, oh, you know, you're only going to get one shot at having a daughter-in-law. You should really, really like bask in it and not create mountains out of molehills, because you're only going to get one. I just began to cry, and I was just at the dinner table, just like uncontrollably like weeping, which is funny when I think about it now, but obviously at the time it was really emotional. And I was just weeping and I was just like sobbing, and she was like, what's wrong with you? It's not directly impacting you. Why are you so emotional about it? And then my brother, who had found out that I was gay within that year, then told my mum, like, he's like that because he's gay and you're probably only going to get one daughter-in-law from me. He's not going to get married to a woman, and he feels guilty. And then she was just like, wait, what? She did not expect on that Tuesday evening, right? No, it was Father's Day. She did not expect on Father's Day, when we're having a meal together with the family, that I was going to be outed to her, essentially. So then all of a sudden she was just, again, she was like my dad, she was just in shock, but she processes it in a different way, where she did cry. She's like, I don't understand. What do you mean you're gay? Like, I don't get it. And then her first question was, do you want to be a woman? And I was like, no, mum, that's transgender. That's a different thing. So my mum was sort of like my biggest rock, essentially, during my mental health crisis, about when I was suffering with depression and feeling really low and like low confidence and all that sort of stuff. And she was my biggest supporter at the time, and she was always asking me questions and trying to find resources to help me, and saying like, and trying to find reasons for why things were affecting me, with, you know, basically trying to find reasons for why I was depressed. And she was always trying to make amends for those different reasons that she found, like, oh, are you studying too much? Is it too much academic pressure? Don't worry, like, I'm not going to put pressure on you. I don't care whether you get good grades. I don't care or not. Just be happy. Like, I'm not fussed. You know, she tried to make amends in all these different aspects to try and make me feel happy. But ultimately, I knew inside that the reason that I am feeling this way is because I can't tell you something, because I'm ashamed of disappointing you. I feel guilty. I'm going to disappoint you. So then when I told her that that's what the real reason was, like all these years later, oh, she was literally just taken aback, and she was like, I can't believe that as a mother, you know, my son was going through that, and I felt that I made an environment around him, not intentionally, where he felt like he couldn't share something fundamental about himself to me. And that's when she said that to me, I was really surprised, because I thought she was crying because I'm obviously gay, and that's gonna, you know, change the whole aspect of the life that she envisioned that me and my brother were going to have. But she's then told me that, no, I'm more upset over the fact that you've had to go through that trouble that you did with your mental health, because you just couldn't say those words to me, and I feel bad that you could just never say it. It's because I can't believe that as a mum, like, I didn't even pick up on that at all. And that really resonated with me, because I was like, there's me having tortured myself for so long, telling myself that my mum's not going to understand who I am. But then she was just like, you know, who cares if you're gay, whatever. I just want you to be happy. I just want a happier son. That's all I care about. All this stuff of having, you know, an ideal son who's married a woman with the perfect nuclear family, you know, that I expected you to have. Yeah, okay, there is a certain level of expectation, but ultimately that I only said that because I thought that's what would have made you happy. But I didn't know that that wasn't making you happy. So that's the main reason here of why, you know, I'm crying. And I was like, wow, okay. So if there was that whole positive environment to begin with, I wouldn't have had to go through that. And I wouldn't have had to then come out, essentially, like in the way that I did. So things that I would say to children in school, sort of discovering their sexualities, is that you don't need to be worried, because when you leave school and you sort of get into the real adult world, essentially, people, the attitudes to gay people is actually a lot more positive than what you'd think. People don't care. People, the amount of people that you think have such negative opinions actually make up the minority of the general opinion that the public have. People who actively preach homophobia, they're the ones who are looked down upon. If you're confident enough in your sexuality, if you then are able to openly, confidently say to somebody that I'm gay, the more confidently you say it, the more likely they are to respect your sexuality. The more likely they are to see that, oh, he's happy and confident within himself. They're not going to challenge it. And that's something that I've learned. So if somebody does say to me, oh, do you have a girlfriend? If I met somebody new at work, I would just immediately correct them and say, no, you mean boyfriend. And then as long as you're confident within yourself and you're happy within yourself, then nobody else can challenge that and take that away from you.